Reserve officers at Camp Vale, New Jersey. Using an outfit with a collapsible loop. With this little machine, it is possible to send and receive, even though located deep in a dugout. This set was developed by William Price during the war. The program doesn't seem to agree with curly hair. All the other members of the radio audience, however, seem gravely attentive to the output of the receiver with which they are being entertained in Central Park, New York. Listening to WJAZ from just outside the studio. Guests at the Edgewater Beach Hotel, Chicago, can see the broadcasters through the windows at the left and the control room operators through the windows at the center. At the same time, they can listen to the program by means of a receiver and loudspeaker. In the Crystal Studio at WJAZ. Guests at the Edgewater Beach Hotel, Chicago, can see the performers in the broadcasting studio through plate glass windows which are 3-ply and hence absolutely soundproof. The microphone is concealed under the lamp at the left of the picture. At camp, for the time between supper and sleep. The large home set can be taken over the hills and far away, when the family chariot does the toting. Broadcasting a night session of a Kansas City court, a part of one of Mayor Cromwell's civic radio nights. Judge Michael J. Kilroy of the Northside Court is at the right of the microphone. Laying down the law to prospective amateur operators. When the successful applicant in New York passes his test for an operator's license, he is given a talk by J.W. Swanson, radio inspector, who is seen at the left. The incipient ham is asked not to transmit during broadcasting hours, be on the alert for SOS signals, and generally maintain the best traditions of the amateur. The comfortable retreat which Mr. A.R. Bosco built in the basement of his house. The fireplace is electric and thermostatically controlled. No getting up from the set to put logs or coal on during the winter evening. A class in accounting at the Harran High School conducted by radio. The dedication of the radio tablet. Mr. H.P. Davis, Vice President of the Westinghouse Electric and Manufacturing Company, is standing nearest the tablet. On his right is the Reverend Edwin J. Van Etten, pastor of the church, and believed to be the first minister in the world to broadcast a sermon. In front of Dr. Van Etten is Bishop Alexander Mann of the Episcopal Diocese of Pittsburgh, and at Bishop Mann's left is Mr. John Fraser, who installs the Westinghouse Company's direct telephone connections for broadcasting outside events. Tablet at Calvary Church, Pittsburgh. More than 4,700 people scattered all over North America contributed small amounts toward this memorial. The first 3 heroes to receive the radio medal. The award of this medal is restricted to wireless operators, and the first 3 were presented to the 3 operators of the city of Honolulu, which burned and sank in the Pacific last spring. Mayor Cryer of Los Angeles made the presentation for the Radio Corporation of America. Left to right, N.C. Cumler, Mayor Cryer, Walter P. Bell, Chief Operator, and H.D. Hancock. A Coinbox broadcast receiver in Paris. In some of the Parisian cafes, movie houses, hotels, and other public places are now found radio-automatic stations at which anyone may listen in on broadcasting programs for a few centimes, at times indicated on a chart hung near the instrument. Using a young blimp to suspend the antenna. Mr. Roy Nabenschuh of Burbank, California, a pioneer aeronaut, constructed this 14-foot balloon, filled it with hydrogen, and sent it up with 200 feet of antenna wire attached. Using a commercial 2-stage receiver, he claims to have received various broadcasting programs with greater clearness than when using a horizontal antenna suspended in the ordinary way. Mrs. Nabenschuh and Mr. R.W. Coburn, on either side of Mr. Nabenschuh, assisted in the experiments. Radio concerts in place of public bands in Paris. Here is a crowd gathered about one of the old bandstands on the Champs-Élysées, listening to music from the Eiffel Tower station just across the river. Hearin' things at night. This clearing in the woods was filled with music from a 4-tube reflex receiver perched on a tree stump. The Scouts are members of Troop 55, Garden City, Long Island. Music hath charms, but not to soothe the too savage breast of this royal prisoner at the Bronx Zoological Park in New York. When music from a broadcasting station was turned on, Chief Keeper John Toomey was glad he was on the outside looking in. Not all the animals lacked the musical appreciation of this lion, however. Trying it on the bears. They liked it, especially the organ music, and were inspired to stand on their hind legs and crowd up close to the loudspeaker. Grandpa felt 600 years younger and seemed decidedly pleased with the radio music. It is estimated that Grandpa celebrated his 269th birthday about the year Columbus came over. General Pershing talks to a million. At least that number, it is estimated, heard his recent speech given at WEAF, New York, and rebroadcasted by WCAP, Washington, D.C., and WMAF, Dartmouth, Massachusetts. A Spanish poet at a French station. Monsieur Carnido is shown broadcasting some of his own poetry through the Eiffel Tower station, in the town called Paris. This sextet furnishes irresistible dance music for KHJ's audiences. It is the Filipino string sextet from the Bluebird Cafeteria in Los Angeles. The 4 steps of banjo frequency amplification, violin detector, and 1 bass guitar form a hookup that is exceedingly popular throughout the West. A place for everything and everything in its place. Amateur Station 2ABT, owned by Mr. George Freisinger of New York. It is one of the most elaborate in the East, and its performance is in keeping with its appearance, as Mr. Freisinger, at right of picture, has heard stations in Europe as well as all over America. The 300-watt transmitter is not shown, but the combination transmitter and receiver of the Navy type using 20-watt Singer tubes for transmitting and a standard honeycomb regenerative hookup with 2 stages of amplification for receiving is mounted on the desk at the left. In the center is a special type of amateur receiving unit with 2 stages of AF amplification. At the right is a 3-stage power amplifier. The boom is on in England, and manufacturers are hard put to supply the increasing demand for broadcast receivers. These women are doing light assembly work at the Marconi Works in Chelmsford. Homeward bound with the caveman set he made at school. This English youngster is eager to see what's on the air down in London. The apparatus looks a bit primitive, but it's easy to get at least. The new stand built for the New York Philharmonic Orchestra. Willem von Hoogstratum is shown conducting his orchestra of 106 men at one of the stadium concerts in New York. The stand, erected by the General Electric Company, is portable and adapted especially for the broadcasting of the orchestra's programs. The 2 black dots, one above the other to the right of the left-hand pillar, are the microphones. Billy Orr of Yoakum, Texas, reaches out more than 1,000 miles with this set. He saved up for a few simple parts, wound his inductance on a salt box, salvaged some old telegraph wire for an aerial, used his dad's auto storage battery as the ABAT, and pulled in Detroit, Denver, and Atlanta. He has left plenty of room for the stage or so of amplification which he hopes to add. The original studio equipment at the Drake Hotel. The pale blue parrot cage support is visible. It holds the signal lamp. The first transmitter at the Drake Hotel. It got its concerts as far as Surrey, England, Rio de Janeiro, Wrangell, Alaska, and to a ship 300 miles this side of Honolulu. People 6 miles away objected to this loudspeaker. Programs were sent out on sound waves from this tower over the whole countryside by Colonel Edward H.R. Green, son of the late Hetty Green, of South Dartmouth, Massachusetts. Residents over in Nunquit were not so keen as was the Colonel, however, for this unusual volume of sound, and accordingly the concerts were discontinued. Speaking to the nation from St. Louis. In his address of June 21st at the St. Louis Coliseum, President Harding said, "It has seemed to me that nearly every city and village from the Potomac to the Pacific has bestowed an invitation and a tender of hospitality. I would like to say to you, because in saying it to you I am speaking to many others in this marvelous age of communication, that I very genuinely regret the impossibility of accepting all of them. Quite apart from the personal satisfaction and renewed assurance and direct contact with our people, I think that there is vast benefit in bringing the government a little closer to the people, and the people a little closer to the government, and closer to those temporarily charged with official responsibility. An interested group at Long Beach, Long Island. Frank M. Squire, chief engineer of the DeForest Company, standing just behind the Bulldog, is trying a new model receiver developed by him, which works a loudspeaker from the small circular loop shown just to the left of the horn. Another record for the Leviathan. Chief Radio Officer Pickerel and his assistant, A.C. Tamburino, are holding some of the 4,000 messages sent and received during the vessel's first trip to Europe and back since her reconditioning. Cornelius Cole, 101, and Richard Hedrick, 6, at KHJ. Here, messages are sent and received throughout the world. The Radio Central Room of the U.S. Navy Department. Communications are transmitted to Lyon, London, Balboa, and to fleets operating near Constantinople. This station has picked up a message from Cairo, Egypt. The clarophone, or static eliminator, invented by W.J. Scott of the Navy Department, is seen in the background, small cylinders projecting from a large horizontal cylinder. Receiving 5 concerts at once with superheterodynes. Claude Golden in the research laboratory of the Experimenters Information Service, New York, tuning in on Pittsburgh, Chicago, Schenectady, New York, and Cleveland. The Radio Corporation's new message center at 64 Broad Street, New York. In this room, messages are exchanged at high speed between America and France, Norway, Germany, and Great Britain via the Great Transmitting Station at Rocky Point, Long Island, and the Receiving Station at Riverhead, Long Island. The wavelengths used are from 10,000 to 20,000 meters. Li Yuanheng, recent president of the Republic of China, an enthusiastic patron of the popular scientific lectures. He is shown with his son and daughter and Professor C.H. Robertson. The apparatus in the picture was built for this lecture work, and was mounted on panels so as to be accessible from front and rear, allowing every detail to be followed out. 2 5-watt tubes were used for transmitting, and for reception, a detector and 2 stages of AF amplification were used, 3 more stages being added when the loudspeaker was employed. Experimenting with a loop transmitting and receiving station in Shanghai. Cadets of the West Point of China in the Temple of the God of War in Pohotingfu. 2 officers of the military radio telephone squad are on the stage. The charts in Chinese at the back of the stage summarize the applications of radio. During the last 2 years, about 400 such audiences have gathered for these radio lectures in China. The Government Radio Engineering School at Shanghai. In the center, X, is Professor T.C. Chung, Dean of the school. With him are some special radio students. The building is finely equipped with classrooms and labs and an operating room in which are various types of phone and telegraph sending and receiving apparatus. Elliot Jenkins, left, and Thorne Donnelly, right, testing their Wrigley Tower outfit. The unassuming shop of Mr. Russell Dio, from which he dispenses radio equipment to Schoharie, New York, and throughout the country. Mr. Frank H. Jones at his receiving station. From here, the telegraph transmitter, located in another room, is operated by remote control. ICW, interrupted continuous wave, transmission is carried on under the call letters 6XJ on 275 meters. This is where the juice originates for 6KW. As the power plant of an amateur's broadcasting station, this would indeed be imposing, but it is first and foremost the power plant of the Tuinuku Sugar Company, of which Mr. Frank H. Jones is chief electrical engineer. WD-11s and WD-12s on the aging table. The tubes are kept on this table 1 hour to increase the possible electron emission and to test for the degree of vacuum. Lighting out. The tube is placed in a holder leading to the 3 lights in series with the grid, plate, and filament. If one of the lamps lights when a tube is placed in the holder, the operator knows that the tube has developed a short circuit.